Hey guys, welcome to Nerdopolitan. I have amazing guests today. It's Ian Green and Ed Cardenas. Ian Green from Greenheart and Ed Cardenas from Monumental. They have an amazing project that we're going to talk about today, and I want you to please listen to what they have to say. Hi, Ian. Hi, Eddie.
Hey.
Hey there.
Hi.
So let's start with Ian. Ian, tell us, what is Greenheart?
So you guys, as you know, my name's Ian Green, and I'm the founder of Greenheart. And Greenheart's a private conservation company. And the reality of what Greenheart is, Greenheart believes in nature. So we invest in nature, we work with it. And what we do is we create sustainable and profitable parks and protected areas around the world. And we're here, good friend Eddie, because we're very hopeful that we can do what we've done in other places around the world in Colombia. We can work with your parks and protected areas and make them an investment that benefits everyone. And most importantly, in a world that believes in money, parks protected areas are your best investment. So if you're looking for an investment that makes sense for everyone and a great return, money, fresh air, clean water, biodiversity, that's what Greenheart is.
Amazing. Okay, Eddie, en español, por favor, cuéntanos.
Sí, claro, en español.
Monumental
en español.
y resume un poco lo que acaba de decir Ian.
Lo que acaba de decir Ian. Sí.
No, lo
claro.
tuyo y lo de Ian, sí.
Bueno,
resume, sí.
Sí, buenas. Mi nombre es Eduardo Cardenas. Soy de Monumental Marketing y Proyectos. Somos una empresa colombiana y estamos enfocados en traer proyectos de crear experiencias únicas en Colombia, especialmente en el ecoturismo, y estamos desarrollando proyectos en Colombia, estamos trabajando con parques y con grupos gubernamentales también para traer estos sistemas de Greenheart, que Ian es mi socio, y para traer esos sistemas a Colombia para traer una nueva experiencia de la naturaleza en Colombia y el ecoturismo.
So Eddie and I were last working together on an eagle viewing tower for the Sts'ailes First Nation. The Sts'ailes First Nation, just up the river from where we are right now, their longhouse dates back 2,800 years. They still live there.
Wow.
We built them an eagle viewing tower because it's right on a salmon spawning stream, and they've yet to realize the potential for wildlife tourism. They have the largest overwinter eagle viewing site in the world. Eagles go to live there for the winter.
That's
There's
amazing.
tons of food, and they've managed to keep that place going for 2,800 years. So if anyone down in LA, Colombia, ever wants to see something incredible, come up here and visit their territory just outside Vancouver, and you will see salmon fill up the streams.
And you were working on this together.
Yeah, Eddie was involved in this
project.
For a few days, help transport some equipment. Yeah.
But most importantly, the idea, and this is getting back to Greenheart, how do you bring people's attention to nature? And how do you let nature start to pay for itself in an economy that is starting to learn to value it, but still really believes in money? So the money can come, and tourism's that opportunity. Right? So when we built, like if you look, Dragon's Breath, it's a zip line in Haiti, and it's in Labadee. It's a private cruise ship port. And we went down there, I think it was 2005. A friend of mine worked for Royal Caribbean. He said, we should go talk to him. We'd been coming back from Nigeria. So we'd already been to hell. So now we were going to upgrade and go to Haiti. And we went down there, looked, and we were standing in the garbage dump outside the cruise ship, sort of private port. And we designed an 800-meter long zip line that's been one of the most popular in the world. And at the time, zip lines in some places like Colombia still have them. They're half-inch cable. They're pretty hokey. You got a glove. This was 7/8 line.
A glove to break.
So this was
stop yourself. You have a glove.
Yeah. So instead of that, we built geodesic towers, 7/8 cable, used ski hill technology, and went across the bay 800 meters. And you would just fly across, and you'd drop 5 people at a time. That's $500 US every couple minutes.
Right.
And we ended up bidding on our own project. We'd hope to be partners in it and have some for the community, some for us, some for Royal Caribbean. But they finally ran the numbers, and that was it. They're like, "Nah, you guys can build it, but we're keeping it."
Keeping the money.
And
that one had a good braking system, I should mention. Like,
Yeah.
not a glove
Yeah.
to brake.
Well, yeah, and we got completely away from that whole idea because, jungle zip lines, half-inch cable, Medicine Man, Sean Connery kind of stuff. It's great, but when you actually start to work with large numbers of people and you're concerned about safety, you look at because you talked about the zip line, you look at it, you see people, their heads next to the cable, they're using a glove, they have no concept of what speed, and the amount of madness that's taking place around the world. And you just can't, we see it the same with walkways, the bridges through the treetops we build. We were just talking about it. There was an issue in Ghana. Canopy walkway had collapsed. But a lot of these projects, they have no budget, right? So they do them with very little budget. And that approach, right? You can understand, I really want to do this. But when it comes to doing safety, imagine if Disney built rides with no money.
Right.
Or, if
they'd have liabilities every week.
Well, and you just have, people who trust, are trusting you to do the right thing, who honestly believe, okay, no worries, right? But when we were talking about Colombia, when you get into really understanding the value of doing proper nature-based tourism, it's more, it makes common sense and logic to invest at the right level so that you've got something that's super safe, spectacular, and it will last. And an example, we built the canopy walkway in Nyungwe National Forest in Rwanda. And that forest, that is the high Afro-montane forest. It's one of the oldest forests in Africa. It's the source of the Nile and Congo. And this is where nature-based tourism really comes in. So imagine that country's got a decision to make. That forest provides 70% of their fresh water. Do they protect their fresh water and the source of the Nile and Congo and make sure that the water keeps flowing for everyone? Or do they just kind of do some hokey stuff and people will keep poaching and cutting, go mining, the forest will disappear? And in Rwanda, they gave the forest in 2007 a value of 360 million US for the water it provides. And because it had that valuation, just like doing a land appraisal, they could go, and at the time USAID existed and was doing some really good things, they funded the park to start up with 30 million US. And with 30 million US, which isn't huge money, but it was enough money to start the park off right. So a really good visitor center, postcard attraction, negotiations at the time with Dubai World to do a lodge just outside the park. The lodge, about 21 million, 22 rooms, sells rooms for $2,000 to $10,000 a night. So that lodge itself brings in some of the most influential people. The park has great guides, great trails, and they've got an attraction that starts to fund the park. And so move ahead now, 15 years later, the park is on track to fund its entire operations. It's approaching 4.5 million US a year in a remote park in Rwanda that was known for genocide. You have one of the smartest countries who overall for tourism are doing almost $1 billion a year in wildlife tourism.
So Ian, are you saying that the park doesn't rely on government funding to operate anymore? It generates its own revenue from the attractions that it has?
Yeah, so the thing here, and what Eddie's saying is the park, like any government, looked at infrastructure. What do we need? First, the infrastructure is the forest. The forest is providing water. What infrastructure can we fund that will allow the park to also generate direct revenue? Because people live around that park. And if you're not making money working with the park, you're usually working against it. And so in this case, in Rwanda, they figured, okay, we need an economy that works with nature. And that's where they started to get into ecotourism. And as you said, now the park is on track to fund itself, create more employment. It uses 10% of that revenue for community projects. So you have this incredible system that anyone could put in place, but it started with a healthy amount of funding. Because one of the things, and when I was younger, I worked with a tribe called the Ngāti in New Zealand, Aotearoa. And the Maori tribe there, wonderful people, they always had good things, but they said the only source of funding they had was the government. And the government it looked like the government had a system. They'd put together a really good project. It would be respectful of their land and who they are. They'd go to the government for funding. Government would give them maybe 30%. Right. Anyone in business knows that you probably need about 120% of what you think you need.
Right.
When you take 30%, you're super passionate, you're really excited, you want to do something, you're funded to fail.
Right.
You do that long enough, you become so disillusioned, you just give up. Right. And it's a great strategy if you want to destabilize like an entire people and make sure that, the people who want to live and invest in nature can't do that. And this brings us to today's world, which is Bitcoin.
Right.
Someone shows up and says, hey, I've got something that doesn't exist, and I'd really like you to invest heavily in it. And to make you feel like it exists, I'm going to use a ton of energy through a computer system, right, that's actually going to suck life from nature so that we can pretend we're looking for something and finding something that doesn't exist. And then the same time, in the same world right now, someone shows up with an amazing forest and says, look, here's this incredible forest that's right in front of you. It's amazing. All we have to do is present it to the world, show them what it does, and we can generate revenue, ecosystem services.
And so there's the idea that we should consider developing as humanity is, how can we create value and valuate nature for what it can produce for humanity, instead of what we can take out of it, right? What it produces for us just by simply existing: food, air, oxygen, water, all these things, instead of, hey, what's underneath it? What can we extract from it? Right?
Yeah, and sort of what Eddie's saying and what we were looking at was that Bitcoin compared to nature valuation. People have been throwing money at Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And people have actually been reducing the amount of funding drastically that we put towards nature, which you obviously, all of us know, we can't live without it. But it's so odd that nature grew up in a model, like a conservation model, that said, okay, everything in our economy that goes against nature, that's our economy. And anything that works for nature is the donor-based thing.
Right.
You can't even think about money. It has to be nonprofit.
You can't capitalize on nature.
Yeah, you cannot.
Unless you're destroying it or removing it and making it non-renewable, or making it no longer able to continue reproducing itself, basically.
Yeah, basically, and I think everyone knows this inherently. Nature's ourselves, right? We're a design. If you think about what's going on in your body, good luck figuring it out. But it works. And you're not really saying, I think I'm going to dig out my kidney today, unless you're really, really desperate.
Right.
When we look at our planet, and they talk about the lungs of the planet, this and that, but we have a pretty good idea how it works. And a reference point would be, Eddie and I are up here in Vancouver. So the coast of British Columbia, Pacific Northwest, massive ocean. So when you look historically at the forest up here,
you have a beautiful forest up there, yeah.
Yeah, massive forest, coastal temperate rainforest from Alaska all the way to Northern California, right? And then it gets bigger with redwoods. But along this coast, living next to the ocean here, nature said, okay, I got a massive ocean. That ocean is going to be sucked up into the atmosphere, and I'm going to drop all that rain. So the first thing nature does is takes a bunch of trees, and not just trees, plants, animals, everything, and builds a forest with a huge canopy, 70 to 90 meters, like a 300-foot tall umbrella. And of course, that umbrella, when that rain comes, it captures all the water, it holds it, it creates a massive sponge of organic material, it filters it, it lets it go into streams, and those streams are so crystal clear, when it flows into the ocean, what comes out of the ocean is salmon up all of those streams.
Right.
So here you have this stable environment with this food security system built in that also does a world for all sorts of biodiversity. And relating back to our own country, what happens in Canada? People look at that, even though the local natives, the Nuu-chah-nulth, the coastal natives on Vancouver Island, had always said and told people the trees hold up the mountains. You cut down the trees, boom, there's no protection.
Right.
The rain comes, the mountains come down, they go into our streams, goodbye fish. So what does Canada build an economy on, especially here? Cutting down all of the forests.
Right.
And of course, now we have what we have up and down the coast. We've got no protection. We got no way to hold water, right? We don't have a system. 1,000-year-old forest is not something you replace overnight. You know, that's
Right.
a multi-generational layered forest. It's one of the most complex living systems in the world. But when you have that system, things work. There's stability, calm. As soon as you give up that system, you go from a forest that has a fire cycle every 500 to 800 years to every single year. And you don't have fish, you have floods and erosion.
Right. How does Greenheart help protect or help make
Yeah,
people
so
aware of this?
Yeah, I think a lot, and Eddie and I have talked about this. Greenheart, the way we approached it is we used to work for groups, and good groups, Conservation International, groups that were concerned and actively trying to work with nature, but they were donor based. So there was
Right.
no real business model. You had to go out and beg for money. And there's some nice people who would donate money. There's other people who just wanted to make you think they were nice. But nobody approached it like, well, what we talked about with the Rwanda, what's nature doing for us already? And what are the benefits? Well, fresh water is a huge thing. If you're living downstream, you're growing things, life is good. And, you know, like I said up here, it's the salmon runs, you've got fish forever. But Greenheart's approach was, okay, we like what we're doing, we like working with nature, but how do we mix between a Western economy, right, which is a money-driven, you know, okay, I need money, I need money. And a friend, close friend of mine, he's now deceased, John Kelson, he built, of all things, a canopy walkway. So he built bridges through the treetops in a park called Kakum in Ghana. And that park is incredibly biodiverse, like the places in Colombia, incredibly biodiverse forest you will not replace. And they built a walkway, and the park went from 800 visitors in 5 years to 80,000. And even today, it sees over 100,000. So all of a sudden, the park was getting an entry fee. People were coming. People were staying overnight. People were so impressed by nature that they would spend their money there. And people who lived around the park who used to have to make money trying to poach birds and stuff, you know, take wood, now made their money through tourism.
Right.
And tourism is kind of like harm reduction,
Right.
right? Ideally, moving a bunch of people by jets all over the world is not the best way, but it does give you the chance to keep your forest and then start to look at, okay, how do I work with it? Because for the longest time, people just worked with it, right? There wasn't this concept. My own daughter, both my daughters are Tupinambá. So it's a tribe on the coast of Brazil, Atlantic rainforest, and they don't really have a word for export. So where they were born and the way the culture is, and you find it with a lot of people that still live close to the land, you know, this is where I live. I'm always going to live here. How am I going to live here? Well, I'm not going to live here if I cut down all the trees. But forests, and this is another kind of thing that we see, is forests are a lot like us. Either any of us get a small cut, good chance we're going to heal, no problem, right? We'll get a small scab, it'll heal up. We lose an arm, life gets hard, and we may die in the process. But if we cut our heads off, it's over.
Right.
So imagine the approach to forestry. There's not many people doing small cuts. Little scab heals up quick, forest is good. Some people are cutting your arm off, but most forestry around the globe is wipe it out. And if you notice forestry never talks about tourism, right? And then you've got, like Colombia and other places, these amazing national parks that were created, but they were never created with the idea, well, how are they going to generate their own revenue so they can make their own decision? And then you have this sneaky world of tourism.
You actually find them, these parks are struggling to get enough resources to update and keep their systems operating and in actually usable condition. So a lot of them are not getting the funding they need to stay accessible to people who want to experience nature, and give them a channel where they can take those visitors so that they don't have a negative impact on the environment. And actually, hey, we all want to experience nature, so why not give everybody a proper way to experience it with some structure and some guidance and
low impact, like low ecological impact.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
And one of the key things Eddie just said, give some structure. So imagine you invite us over to your house,
right?
But you're not even home. You can't even afford to be in your house. And we just wander around and we look around and we grab some stuff and we're like, it's kind of nice house. And we just make a mess.
Yeah.
And then we leave. And your house, which you've tried to keep decent and intact, you shouldn't have let us in.
Right.
But if you're going to let us in, you should be there at the door and you should greet us and you should tell us, okay, I'm going to take you and give you a tour. Right? I'm going to show you what's here. And I'm going to tell you what's important to me so you don't mess it up. And if we look at national parks around the world, any park, any protected area, it's probably one of the keys. So getting back to Greenheart, what we found that worked for forests was for people to look at a forest, there's forests everywhere. But if you put up a structure, like a series of bridges through the treetops as an example of what we've been doing, all of a sudden you frame the forest. You gave something, okay, I want you guys to come enter the forest here. And in fact, I want you we want to attract people. We want them to be educated. So you employ local guides, people who know the forest. We want them to stay off the ground at this point because we know that ground trails have a massive impact. And when you have people using ground trails, you want them to be conscious of stay on the trail. So their first experience in your forest is literally with the least impact possible and the best return that you're going to get. Because now you have revenue, employment, and you have that entry point to nature.
And conservation.
Yeah, the conservation and the education that will keep conservation going. But you did it with the understanding, I need to make money. If people are going to come here, I'm going to need money. They're going to keep coming. And when I want to send them somewhere else, hey, I can afford to keep the trails going. I can monitor the wildlife. I can make sure, that there's alternatives for poachers. You don't need to be in here hunting and taking everything out.
Right.
So the idea, and this is getting back to what we started with Greenheart, was why is conservation not profitable? Who benefits from keeping conservation as a donor-based model? Who made the decision in forestry to ignore things like tourism?
Right.
And why, when we have a really well-educated group of people and people all over the world talking about, I care about nature, how come they don't know how to invest in nature? Not how come they don't know, how come it's just not possible to invest in forest conservation and do well? If you put your money in forest conservation, you can make some great money. There's been walkways around the world. There's one in Lagos, wetland in Lagos called Lekki, right? It has a Greenheart system. A friend had put it in. 100,000 visitors go on that, visit that park, but through the air. And that revenue that they generate helps fund conservation efforts around that whole country. That's Nigeria. It's a beautiful country, some really smart people. A lot of people at times are always like, oh, Nigeria is such a crafty place, But they're thinking, I like nature, but I know I need money. And when we've been talking about the parks of Colombia or Canada, there's an incredible opportunity right now for people to realize, okay, our parks aren't funded. Well, how do I still invest in parks and protected areas that give me a stable environment, clean water, fresh air? And that's what Greenheart's out to do. That's why we're looking at how do we put what we know, which is a conservation management plan funded by ecotourism.
Right.
And that's a lot different. And most importantly, it's not like up here in Canada, we had the previous government, which was what you'd consider to be a kind of, a sort of mid of the road, thoughtful, thinking about nature. They show up, they spent 40 billion on a pipeline.
Right.
You imagine, and without a blink, you ask the same people who tell you they're concerned about nature, hey, we'd like you to invest in nature. They just look like a deer in the headlights.
Right.
They have what are you talking about? No, we can't do that. We just spent 40 billion on a pipeline we bought from ex-Enron employees. And, you're down in the US, right?
Yep.
And you look north and you think, that's an interesting country, Canada. It's
Right.
huge. Looks like wilderness everywhere. But then you're thinking, well, the coastal forest, there's less than 10% of the original left. And then you start thinking, there's only 40 million people up there. What's going on? How do so few people, through their economy, take so much from nature, and everyone thinks that this is some haven for conservation? When the last thing, unfortunately, right, that we choose to invest in is nature. What would benefit everyone? Like what Rwanda did when they protected the source of the Nile in Congo. And, America follows suit. I've noticed with the Minister of Environment for Colombia and the approach, what, I've learned from Eddie and just seen myself, is there's a different mentality. There's an interest in, if we invest in the infrastructure we need to grow an economy that works with nature, we're all going to do well. We're not going to have the landslides, the fires, the heat domes. Like you step back here in June 2021 in Vancouver, there was what we called the heat dome. So near the end of the month, the heat came and it killed over 600 people in a weekend. And the response, nothing. Like literally that was heat brought on.
No response from the government.
Nothing, right? It was unbelievable.
Stay indoors, stay in the shade, stay cool.
Well, and think of a planet that was covered with a massive amount of forest, a planet that was shaded. Because when you walk in, we have a walkway here at the University of British Columbia, beautiful forest. And when you walk in there, because you've got the tall trees and you've got a canopy cover, the temperature is about 10 degrees cooler. You're immediately in shade. But if you walk into any of our cities, the forest is the last thing that's left in any city. You might get a park that's been replanted, but you seldom get people who look and say, okay, I want to live here, but I want to live with nature and get all the benefits of it. And then try to get that, as I said, to the stock market, even to a crowdfunding site and say, listen, you guys, those of us who want to live a good, healthy life, let's invest in nature. And that's the hope with Greenheart, with projects in Colombia, projects all over, is that we can gather people up who really understand nature does a world of good for everyone. We're not looking at, okay, these benefits are for me or you. Like the fresh air will go anywhere it wants.
It's for the entire planet, yeah.
Exactly, right? Like how many people, like when it comes to government, and I had the good fortune, I spent some time in Bhutan and meeting with the prince. And of course, Bhutan, they stood up at the UN a while back and they said, okay, gross domestic product, that sounds pretty odd. Doesn't make a lot of sense. You want to just eat up nature. But gross national happiness, which kind of comes down to this: if it's not good for the planet, it's not good for the people, don't do it.
That's
nothing good is going to come.
One of the policies from the current president of Colombia, Petro, is that he wants to make the energy go into renewable energy, and he's looking for protecting the whole planet, in fact, by protecting the forests and the national parks of Colombia. So I think this would be a great, like a perfect fit for the Greenheart and Monumental, right?
And you can see the thoughts about like having a leader like that who's actually thinking, what can we do to make sure that nature's able to support everyone?
There needs to be every government has to prioritize also capital and economic development, and all of the contributions to social programs that come from your standard industries. And Colombia's tourism industry has exploded over the past 15 years or so, and it's become such a big international hotspot. And I've also noticed that in Colombia, the internal tourism is huge as well. Everybody loves to go out. They like to visit the towns that surround the bigger
They
cities.
like to visit the parks.
The parks, right? And so what we want to do, what Monumental wants to do with Greenheart, is be a part of that industry where we create where we contribute to both goals of developing the economic abilities for the country and also creating that conservation element of the natural environment, which is really Colombia's treasure. Like it's one of the most unique ecosystems and highest in biodiversity, right? Like the second highest in biodiversity on the whole planet. So
Yeah, it's crazy. It has in fruit, it has more more different types of fruit than there are days in a year. So you can eat a different type of fruit each day, and you won't have enough days to try all the different fruits.
So
for bird watchers is like a haven for bird watchers. Like
I was going to say for bird watchers, yeah. Greenheart systems, the engineering is designed to elevate and change your perspective and get you up in the canopy where now all of a sudden we're used to looking up, right? But now all of a sudden we can go up into the canopy and look down, right? And have a whole different perspective on nature.
Well, you can even see it a lot of times in a forest. People don't get what Eddie said. A chance to look at how does nature naturally grow itself, and it has a system a lot like us. If you come from a healthy family, your grandparents, they did well and they took care of their parents and you. And when they passed, they left, in the case of forest, incredible soil, a great opportunity. Their offspring had grown up strong and they were going to continue to grow and seed. And Colombia, as you're saying, has this incredible biodiversity, treasures you'll never replace, right? Like you imagine the effort they put into the Louvre. Oh, this is something we value. We're going to protect it. Colombia is positioned like that, but with everything around you. You guys have the most incredible stuff. And then getting back to the, working with nature, we all get back to that idea. Small cut, you'll recover from. And knowing where you live and at what level you can take, be it these, 365 plus fruits, okay, well, I can take this much out, but I can't take it all. There's a certain level. And then also when you get up into an environment like the rainforest canopy, you realize all the things that live there. Well, all these things that live there, they also need to eat. And your exposure and understanding by being closer to nature, especially if you can be closer on a daily basis, then you start taking into account everything you live with. And when you do that, everything seems to work a little better. Well, you have the opportunity in tourism to now, because you guys are focused on it, to look at how does it benefit everyone and everything. And a lot of countries never had that chance. Tourism was imposed on them. This is tourism. It's like Cancun. It's going to be big hotels. It's going to be this. It's just going to bulldoze nature.
Yeah.
Whereas you guys
and poorly behaved tourists too. Like
yeah, it's not people you want to invite over, right?
Right. You want tourism that are eco-friendly for these for Colombia.
Tourism
especially.
that appreciate the fact that, listen, Colombia is a treasure. Treat it that way. And a friend of mine, he's passed, but he was a Heshwood elder, Stephen Charlson. And he used to talk about tourism. He's like, listen, I don't mind tourism, but my house, unlike, hey, white guys, your house is pretty tiny. My house is 250 miles of coastline. I have to know who's coming into my house. I need them, as we talked earlier, to come through the front door. I need to greet them, know who they are. I can't let them just run around. And I've already lived in my house for thousands of years, so I know how it works. And if you think about this with Colombia, indigenous tourism, rainforest-based tourism, everything that you guys have to offer. When you know how the system works, you know what it can handle, you know what you want to present. In this case, when we talk about national parks, those are the treasures that you want to attract people to and show them. But you want to make sure that that visit is positive for that place and the people that live there. And obviously, you need to have a very positive experience for your visitor. But that comes with showing them things like you can't believe. Like you talked about the bird life.
I think there's I want to say something, because I had this, this realization, possibly, maybe it's not at the same level, but I'm sure we've all heard about the theory of, the evolution of human consciousness. At some point, we took mushrooms, or we took plant substances that changed our perspective, changed the way that our brains function, the way that we looked at nature, changed the way that we operated within as human beings in general. And those experiences obviously are plant induced and can be hallucinogenic and everything, and amazing spiritual experiences, and maybe some a little more troublesome for some people. But I think that with especially with the stuff that Monumental wants to bring from Greenheart to Colombia, is that having a new perspective on nature can have a similar impact on your consciousness, where we're used to walking through the forest floor, we're used to sticking our feet in the river, and those are all experiences that many of us can share and have in common. Going up into the forest canopy and having birds and being able to interact with species that are right there in that height, you have a new perspective on the forest floor. You have a new perspective on the canopy as well. That's an experience that could have a deep impact on our consciousness and our development. So I think that's another reason why these systems are so unique and so special, and such an important system that can be developed. Also, the zip lines too. It's a huge rush, a huge thrill, but the views that you can get from them, again, another like monumental experience that stays in your mind.
There's another thing that
I've ridden Ian's zip lines. I rode Ian's zip lines.
They're safe? You haven't fallen yet?
Oh, they're safe. Yeah. I rode the one in Las Vegas. I rode the one in San Diego Zoo. Yeah, they're a lot of fun. And
there's one thing that I think that Greenheart and Monumental would be great for Colombia is there's lots of videos on YouTube about children going to school, and they actually have to take unsafe zip lines, and they have to do like a 2-hour hike to get to their schools in time. Like building a system of walkways and zip lines for children to get safe to school, and like enjoy nature as a form of public transit in the forest or in the mountains of Colombia. That could be like an interesting way also to just like for people to take hikes, like city people, like city folk, just like go to see like how the kids get to school, but more structured, like Ian was saying. That's a possibility that I think.
Proper braking systems, good safety.
Yeah, with safety measures, proper braking systems. That the zip lines that they're like, they're kind of improvised. They're kind of dangerous for kids right now. That could be a good way to solve many problems, and also a form of investing in tourism, because
investing for campesinos.
Yeah, right? you can like no charge for like the locals, and if you're a tourist, then you pay a fee, and that'll maintain. I don't know. That's like an idea that pops in my head. That
I think that's very cool.
That you guys could you guys should definitely work on that too.
Well, ideally, if you're looking at access, like a lot of villages, they'll have rivers to cross, and the bridges will be bare bones, right?
Right.
It's all because of that economics. But if that trail, we have a trail on the west coast of Vancouver Island, 7,500 people a year sign up to go on that trail. They pay $200 just for that privilege. And then they're spending money on either side. So if you know the trails that are already in use by individuals in Colombia who use them daily to get places, you could redesign that system So it's both benefiting the locals, but it's also attracting visitors.
Right.
And one of the incredible things, there's a lot more of a push toward the Camino, right? These pilgrimages, these walks in nature. And you think of the places where you could create hikes and trails that would benefit local communities, but give people from outside of Colombia, not just a 1 day or a 7 day, but a month-long experience wandering, wandering trails of Colombia and being immersed in Colombia. You will have people that, in reality, they'll become, addicted to nature in your country. They will become the best supporters, and they will be the people who want to promote Colombian tourism, but promote it to the people that hopefully you guys would like to see, people who want to benefit the country. They don't want to take anything from it. They actually just want to come, and based on their experience, have a better understanding and connection. And I'm sure a lot of urban Colombians would also benefit, from going back out and spending time in nature.
Right.
The hardest thing for anyone to do now who's urban is to find the time to give themselves the chance to go out and get healthy. And the healthier you want to be, just find the healthiest environment, find the most natural, the cleanest water, the freshest air, and spend time there.
It's important to mention. It's important to mention that in Colombia right now, after the peace treaty from over 8 years ago, lots of magical places opened up where the guerrilla used to be, where lots of violence used to be. Lots of magical places opened up where you can go rafting, just like getting into these amazing rivers, and lots of tourism opened up because of that too. So it's also like a way of getting to know your country, love your country, and a way of maintaining peace.
Una cosa que todos sabemos es que los colombianos aman a Colombia.
Right.
Y aman a su país tanto, hasta los que no están, los que no nacieron, los que están, y los colombianos que están, aman a Colombia.
Sí.
Y les fascina viajar y a conocer, y todos queremos ir y conocer más a Colombia. Yo recientemente pude ir y empezar a conocer más del país, más regiones, diferentes ciudades y diferentes entornos y ambientes, y es algo que entre uno más conoce, más se enamora del país y más se da cuenta de qué tesoro es lo que tiene Colombia. I was saying that Colombians love Colombia. We love it.
You're born into it.
You're born into it, whether you were born there or not born there, or you left. Even, no matter if you left, you still love it. It's still a part of you. And the more we explore it, the more we fall in love with it. So this is
a call of nature that sometimes like you miss it and you want to go back to that beautiful natural place.
Yeah. In Brazil, it's saudades, right? You have this incredible feeling of missing your country.
Es verdad.
What is the word?
Saudades.
Saudades.
What does that translate to?
It translates like to a longing.
Anhelos o nostalgia, más como anhelos.
Mm-hmm. But one thing I was just wanting to bring up, because one of the things when we talk tourism, if you have a strategy, because we just talked about urban people needing contact with nature. And when we talk about this, what we're thinking with Greenheart and the economy, one of the discussions was in the major metropolitan areas where you have a park, you put in a walk through the treetops. You give people easy access to the full forest. But from that initial walk, then you build out a trail, a network of systems, because that initial walk in a popular park in, say, Bogota, that can generate an incredible amount of revenue. If you take that revenue and you start to seed and fund projects in more remote areas where you don't want to see a large number of visitors, but you want visitors and you want the local community to have a fund they can access, nature-based tourism can fund itself once you have the initial sort of stronghold in key areas. Most importantly, the people in these metropolitan areas, even if they only get to go and spend time in that urban forest, their benefit that they leave, that ticket price is going to support conservation throughout Colombia.
So can I say that in Spanish more or less? Because I think that's an
Yeah,
important point.
I think we have to also make our way into Spanish now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, lo que Ian decía es que
Sí.
los parques naturales situados en áreas urbanas, los parques que están adentro de la ciudad, también se pueden convertir en experiencias de ecoturismo. No tiene que salir uno de la ciudad para tener esa experiencia, lo puede tener en la misma ciudad con infraestructura liviana que se puede instalar por una temporada temporal, no tiene que ser permanente. Se puede instalar para eventos especiales, para ferias, o digamos, puede ser unos meses para que la gente pueda tener esas experiencias y tomar un descanso y tener una perspectiva nueva de la naturaleza que está dentro de esos sitios urbanos también. Y esos parques pueden desarrollar bastantes ingresos de ese tipo de instalación que le puede aportar a apoyar a programas sociales, a grupos que hacen trabajos sociales también, ¿cómo se llaman? Las cajas de compensación, por ejemplo, que la ciudadanía general puede disfrutar mucho de esta infraestructura y estas experiencias dentro de la misma ciudad. No tienen que salir y andar horas y horas para tener esas experiencias, ese descanso mental, digamos.
Por ejemplo, una de las cosas que decía Ian, que es muy importante que este tipo de proyectos ecológicos no recibe la misma financiación que proyectos de extractación, de extracto,
Sí.
de extraer como
Recursos.
de extraer recursos, pero sí recibe algún porcentaje pequeño, pero un proyecto como el de ustedes, de Greenheart, se vuelve autosostenible y deja ingresos a la comunidad y es sin daño ecológico. De pronto
Sí,
nos explicas un poco más de eso, Eddie.
sí, claro. El impacto es mínimo. Los diseños que ellos tienen, digamos, por ejemplo, el anclaje que utilizan es un sistema muy seguro pero tiene un impacto muy pequeño. No tienen que hacer un hueco grande en el suelo del bosque, por ejemplo. Solo se hacen varios huecos pequeños que no afectan el sistema de raíz de los árboles, no afecta la estabilidad de la tierra por debajo, pero sostienen la infraestructura de una manera muy estable. Y entonces, perdón, ¿me puedes repetir qué era la pregunta?
Sí, la pregunta es
Se me
como,
pasó. Se me
sí, no,
pasó.
como ahora, sí, que este proyecto se vuelve autosostenible, así sea con
Ajá.
un poquito de inversión, pero es algo que se replica, se
Sí,
vuelve autosostenible,
sí,
deja ingresos para proteger el medio ambiente, para la comunidad, da
claro,
trabajos
claro.
y habilita transporte para la gente local. Entonces, de pronto,
No,
si puedes ampliar un
bueno,
poco de
entonces
eso.
voy a tocar en ese tema y uno que hablamos un poquito anterior, es que muchos de estos sistemas se desarrollan sin mucho presupuesto. Nunca tienen el presupuesto apropiado para desarrollar el proyecto en, en, en completo, digamos. Entonces empiezan, pero no terminan, o tienen que recortar ciertos gastos y terminan con un producto, un sistema que no es tan seguro, no tiene digamos, como la ingeniería al nivel que debe estar para sostener la cantidad de gente que va a visitar y lo va a utilizar, y entonces se deteriora muy rápido. Los sistemas que trabajamos en Monumental con Greenheart son sistemas de muy bajo mantenimiento y duran muchos años, décadas, sin pudrirse, sin tener que reemplazar digamos, los cables. El anclaje es muy estable, no hay que volver, se comprueban con pruebas
De
con
construcción.
de construcción. Claro, un ingeniero tiene que venir y revisar todo. pero
El mantenimiento, ¿cómo sería?
es muy bajo, es muy bajo. De vez en cuando a veces hay que templar ciertos cables o apretar tuercas, pero es muy sencillo. No, no es muy complicado hacer el mantenimiento. Pero lo que pasa entonces es que si seguimos invirtiendo en los sistemas que no son adecuados para el crecimiento que el país está esperando del turismo, del ecoturismo, entonces esos sistemas van a tener que volverse hay que gastar, uno termina gastando más en esos sistemas porque hay que hacer arreglos. Tal vez ocurre un incidente donde alguien se aporrea, se lastima o peor, y eso ya crea un problema legal también. Entonces, los sistemas que Monumental va a traer son sistemas que se han comprobado de bastantes décadas.
De décadas.
Sí, de décadas, llevan
De
más
la
de
experiencia,
25 años,
Greenheart, ¿cuántos años tiene
más de
trabajando
25 años llevan instalando estos sistemas
en países por todo el mundo?
por todo el mundo, en Ruanda, en Ghana, por toda África, en el Caribe,
Brazil,
en Brasil,
Malaysia.
Asia, por toda Asia, Malasia. Entonces, la inversión, hacer una inversión apropiada, crea oportunidades para los, los, eh, los grupos sociales, crea empleo, crea buenos ingresos para los que están trabajando, diga, los que digo, prestan el terreno para estos sistemas, también les trae muchos ingresos. Se vuelve en un sistema muy lucrativo que está basado en el ecoturismo. Entonces, la verdad es que no tiene como, eh, no pierde, nadie pierde.
Me gustó lo que mencionaba Ian también en inglés sobre cómo a la vez es algo para proteger la naturaleza porque educa y le da guía a las personas que vienen a visitar de afuera y a la gente también del mismo Colombia que viene a visitar estas áreas, estos parques, le da una especie de guía de cómo se debe visitar estos lugares, qué cuidados
Sí,
toca tener con estos lugares, porque generalmente eh, va la gente, si no hay una estructura como la que plantean ustedes, sin una estructura, la va la gente y se roba un mico,
sí.
mata una iguana, mata, no
La,
sé,
la,
mata
la gente, digamos, ese tipo de daño ambiental no va a cambiar mientras la gente no tenga un escape saludable que pueda ser como un healthy outlet. ¿Sí me
sí,
entiendes?
un escape con la naturaleza, o sea, la
Con la
gente,
naturaleza. Siempre estamos buscando la naturaleza de alguna forma. La gente siempre va a la naturaleza a conectarse, a reducir el estrés, a calmar la mente, a bregar a deshacerse de los problemas mentales, emocionales. La naturaleza siempre nos trae ese sanamiento y siempre vamos a ir a buscar esos sitios, pero no todos estamos educados en cómo comportarnos con la naturaleza porque vivimos en ciudades, en sitios urbanos donde es una selva diferente. Entonces, si la gente no tiene un camino que seguir, que los pueda guiar y les dé esa experiencia, esa conexión, pueden ir y terminar haciendo más daño de lo que se hace si tienen un sistema eh, que está estructurado para que tengan esas experiencias y puedan obtener el mismo sanamiento, eh, la misma cambio de conciencia que, que hubieran tenido sin esos sistemas.
claro. Y por ejemplo, entonces, una cuestión que me parece interesante también es lo que, lo que estábamos hablando, creo que lo hablamos en inglés y no en español, es que generaría eh, lo de los caminos para los locales, como los niños que van al colegio, que se
Ajá.
demoran 2 horas en llegar, que ya
Sí.
hay sitios de Zipline que los niños se botan, pero con mínimo seguridad. Esto ya de
Sí.
pronto podría ser algo que podría trabajar ustedes con mejor seguridad, ¿no? Y podrían ayudar
Sí,
a eso.
Su idea es muy interesante, es un sistema como de tránsito
Yeah.
público para las áreas del campo,
Rural, sí.
donde los caminos se acaban y los niños, por ejemplo, que van a la escuela, se tienen que montar en una de estas tirolesas, también le dicen canopy, se montan en una tirolesa que está, quién sabe cómo la instalaron, y, y no tiene las mismas medidas de seguridad que un sistema moderno aporta. Entonces, sí, es muy posible que se pueda crear un sistema de tránsito para los campesinos, para la gente que trabaja y vive en el campo, que tienen que ir a la escuela, tienen que ir a mercar o tienen que llevar eh, lo que sea. La familia se tiene que mover a varios lugares. Entonces, un sistema así se puede desarrollar y sería un impacto grande para las áreas rurales.
Okay, I have a question for Ian, so we can
Yeah.
maybe begin to close the subject matter. I don't know if Ian has been to Colombia. Have you been to Colombia, Ian, yet, or not yet?
I haven't. I've worked in Brazil, Guyana, Peru, but I haven't worked in Colombia.
Okay, so for example, like maybe like price range and maybe what you've talked to Eddie, like with an example of one of the structures they've built someplace in the world. Which structures do you think would be fit for Colombia, and like an estimate maybe like of how much that could cost and how fast the community can get that money back in the investment, maybe an idea.
Yeah, to give you an example, the Lecky Canopy Walkway in Lagos, that was about I think a 1.3 million US system, and they have 100,000 people a year. It's Lagos, so the price point is lower, but they're still bringing in possibly 300 to 500,000 a year, right? So
So
their system's paid back in 2 years.
in 2 years it pays back, and then you have
Yeah,
like the
2 to
rest
3 years you've paid back, and then for the rest of that time, you've put in a system that protects nature. And
Right.
one thing I was gonna say, right, if you look at the problem with conservation, we talked about it. People don't invest to be successful. They do the bare minimum,
Right.
and everything else. You want a new casino, you open up the floodgates. The last casino in Vegas was like $1 billion.
Right.
Think about nature. All Colombia's grown one of the most impressive forests in the world. And that forest has been grown because nature, and people living with nature did that. Colombia now has a chance to have tourism support what you've grown, not
Right.
take from it, but add to it. And so when you think about investment, I look at Rwanda. They knew that forest was giving 360 million in ecosystem services. Now it's valued at 5 billion in ecosystem services. It cost them all of 30 million to make sure that a $5 billion system kept operating.
Right.
And they created this system to fund that because they knew money wasn't part of that system originally.
Right.
But okay, now we need money. So what's the investment we're willing to make? And when we talk about the national parks, which I think is a really good starting point, you don't just think about one, you think about a network. And how do you plant what you need so that each of those important parks, protected areas, will now fund itself? It has the means, over an investment period. And when we get back to one thing I apologize I missed, when we do an urban walkway or something in nature, the idea is that first and foremost attracts and educates people. Because a lot of people living in urban environments everywhere, their life is without nature. They seldom have a chance to really get pulled into nature and enjoy it, enjoy being with their friends, laugh, see everything that's around. I've spent most of my life in nature. When we built in Rwanda, we lived in the forest. When we built in the Atlantic rainforest in Brazil, there's 400 tree species per hectare in the Atlantic rainforest of Brazil. You will never replace that. Even the coastal temperate rainforests here, although the number of species is lower, the actual structure has to grow over thousands of years. So when you start working with things that you know you cannot replace, and then you take the mentality of, well, what is it worth? What's it worth investing? It's worth investing more than enough to make sure it's secure.
Right.
And when you start to grow tourism, because Colombia is newer to tourism, you honestly have that, you have the leadership, obviously, in government that realizes, okay, let's grow tourism that is good for nature because it's good for us.
Sí, Eddie puede explicar eso
Sí,
en
voy a decir
español.
algo, no es exactamente lo que digo, pero algo que se me ocurrió es que basado en lo que Ian estaba diciendo, es que un proyecto en Nigeria que hicieron tenía un presupuesto de 1.5 millones de dólares gringos, pero ha generado de ingresos durante 20 años. How much was that Lagos project?
It was about
1.5,
about 3 to 500,000 a year
35,000
at a low price point.
Entonces, de una inversión de 1.5 millones de dólares estadounidenses, en 2 o 3 años el proyecto se pagó por completo y ya lleva casi 20 años ese proyecto operando y cada año tienen 100,000 visitantes y ese ingreso que se queda con el parque, se queda con los que organizaron el proyecto. Entonces, la capacidad de generar ingresos es muy alta de estos sistemas, especialmente si están en un lugar apropiado, tienen el apoyo que se pueda ejecutar bien el proyecto. Pero en el instante que Ian se me ocurrió algo, es que hay proyectos que no se deben hacer por el dinero. Un proyecto de estos no se hace solamente por el dinero. Obviamente el dinero es importante, muy importante para poder hacerlo bien y para tener buenos resultados y para que el proyecto siga ahí y que la gente siga disfrutando de él. Pero el dinero va a venir. Si se hace bien, la gente va a llegar y están muy felices de pagar la entrada a utilizar el sistema y va a generar el dinero. Pero esta es una decisión que no se debe tomar solamente basado en el presupuesto, en el dinero. Es algo que hay que pensar el impacto, el valor de la conservación, el valor de la educación, el valor de los cambios de conciencia que puede generar en los niños, en la gente adulta, porque los sistemas, los senderos áreos, que así le decimos al canopy walkway, es el sendero áreo, hasta gente mayor también se puede subir, porque es muy seguro, es muy estable, no es peligroso, y entonces está abierto para una cantidad de gente que pueda disfrutar de esa experiencia. Entonces, el valor de eso es algo que también hay que considerar, no solamente, bueno, ¿cuánto cuesta esto? Pues puede costar mucho menos, se puede hacer por menos, pero no va a tener la misma seguridad, como mencionamos antes. La seguridad es algo que se vuelve más arriesgoso y la calidad de la experiencia puede sufrir bastante y la longevidad del proyecto va a sufrir. Estos son sistemas que pueden durar 20, 30 años, como se lo hemos explicado.
Ok. No, pues está muy bien. Por ejemplo, creo que hemos cubierto bastante. Me gustaría, si saben de algo que no hemos cubierto, Ian, if you think of something that we haven't covered yet, like something optimistic about this project that you want to share that definitely has to be in this interview.
I think the most important thing is, Colombia, through the leadership, you understand the importance of investing in nature. Greenheart with Monumental present that opportunity, something real. We just saw COP, right? The whole, let's build a massive road through Belaine, like things that made no sense. And then, hopefully what we've been able to present to you is a world of experience working in forestry, but in tourism. Because that forest is worth more to everyone in the world standing. And right. If people need to take from that forest, take lightly. And if we need to generate revenue, because you don't want money to dictate what you believe in and what you do, but it plays a big role in everyone's life. So we can offer up an investment in nature that will actually give you a better return than you're most likely going to get in the stock market. And most important, it's real. It's not Bitcoin. It's not this. It's not that. You're actually investing, in something you can go out and see. And the nice thing about nature compared to, imagine parks. People will think about parks. They'll think about Disney, spending $1 billion, 300 million on a Harry Potter ride. And then you walk into one of your national parks in Colombia, you've got birds that are unbelievable, incredible, just flying through, monkeys, all sorts of living things, so-called exhibits, right? These are all present and they're all there. And the more you realize how valuable that is, the better the country becomes. Because as I said, relating back here to Canada, we've given up on our coast 90% of our forest. So we're seeing fires and floods. And as I said, a heat dome that killed on a weekend 600 people. Don't make that mistake, right? You honestly, you value nature, you're set. You're going to, in a sense, most people are more concerned about saving money than saving forest. So let's look at it this way. You can save your forest and make money. Is there any reason not to choose doing that?
Exactly. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, and that's what everyone, I think, no matter who you are on the planet, if you can create a win-win situation where nature is the foundation of that win, everything on the planet won.
Awesome. Well, Eddie, do you have anything, a conclusion in Spanish that you want to share with us? Maybe just translate what Ian said.
Ian es una persona muy apasionada de la naturaleza. Obviamente, él es súper apasionado en la conservación, en los ecosistemas, cómo todo funciona junto. Y ha creado algo muy impresionante con su compañía, con Greenheart, lo que han desarrollado durante estos 25 años y los proyectos que han hecho son súper impresionantes, súper chéveres, cosas que son súper divertidas, que la verdad es que la gente deben tener esa experiencia o la oportunidad de tener esa experiencia. Entonces, cuando yo fui a Colombia recientemente, me di cuenta que esto es algo que podemos traer, que obviamente Colombia tiene ecoturismo, el ecoturismo no es nuevo en Colombia, el turismo no es nuevo en Colombia, las experiencias de la naturaleza no son nuevas en Colombia, hay muchas, pero esta es una perspectiva, como había explicado antes, crea una perspectiva completamente diferente que no se ha visto en Colombia, en general, con la población general. Entonces, Monumental, yo creé Monumental para traer a Greenheart a Colombia a poder desarrollar estas experiencias para adaptarlas al mercado colombiano, para que los colombianos puedan conocer un nuevo aspecto de la naturaleza que nos rodea. Entonces, esa es la idea que nació con Monumental, es traer esas experiencias únicas que se le graban a la memoria, porque para mí, las experiencias en Colombia desde chiquito, como yo no me crié allá, las experiencias se me grababan en la memoria, los olores, los sonidos, la comida, obviamente, viendo los colores de la naturaleza, todo eso se me grabó en la memoria y estos son elementos de lo que pensamos crear con estos sistemas, es que se le grabe en la memoria a la gente ese árbol tan impresionante, wow, ese pájaro que pude ver desde el puente. Muchas experiencias que la gente va a tener que no se han visto, simplemente no se han visto de esta manera.
Well, this was an amazing conversation. Got to know a little bit about Greenheart. Well, we got to know a lot about Greenheart and Monumental. They have an amazing project. I hope this catches on, and I hope it becomes a reality. I want to thank Ian Green and Eddie Cardenas for being in Nerdopolitan. And thank you, Ian. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Andres.
I hope you guys are back with us soon. And please like and subscribe and follow for more interesting content like the one we had.
Do you want to put the monkey on your head?
The monkey?
Yeah.
You guys have a monkey? That's awesome.
You cannot do an interview without a monkey on your head.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you exactly, because I worked in a project in Manaus, and we had a monkey called Chiquinho. And Chiquinho would walk around with us when we were designing.
Yeah.
And then he would lie down and cry. And you would have to literally put him on your shoulders. And you'd carry him back to the reserve, and he'd be on your head. And you're wearing a fur hat in the tropics, and you're dying. And Chiquinho's killing himself laughing, right?
He was like a hairy scarf
Oh, it's fantastic.
in tropical weather.